Hey, welcome back to Splash Page. I'm Andrew, and with me is Sean. We just got to watch episodes 4 through 6 of Vox Machina, The Legend of Vox Machina Season 2. And Sean, let me ask you a question. Was this show amazing or unbelievable?
I would say it was unbelievably amazing.
It's
The three episodes were so fun, so dark, and really like set up for a huge continuation and then finale of this season.
I heard through the grapevine, full hearsay, I think they're thinking of trying to do 5 seasons, maybe hit 6, so we'll see where we go from here. But for now, let's dive into this week's episodes, 4 through 6. What do you say?
Sounds good.
So we start out episode 4, still in the dungeon. Vex is still dead, and their friends from the Slayers take Cash and Zara come running out of a sarcophagus that was obviously the wrong one. And Cash and Pike get to working on a resurrection spell to try to bring Vex back to life.
If they brought her back right away, you'd say like, oh, what was the point of even having her die in that way? But that's not to say she doesn't come back pretty much right away. It's just a cooler way of coming back.
Well, she came back a couple seconds later, but the key thing here is that it wasn't the resurrection spell that brought her back. It was Vax, her brother, begging the Raven Queen to take him instead of her. It looks like she kind of did, because Vex comes back to life and Vax ends up wearing the Raven Queen's armor, the Deathwalker's ward already. He's become her champion.
They call it the vestige, right?
Yeah, so we make it out of the cave. Everyone is alive again. Oh, but before we do, Zara decides to turn on the team and pulls something I don't think I could legally call a beholder out of a locket, but it's a beholder. The team fights it and ends up losing pretty badly up front. Everyone's turned to stone, while Vax is having some kind of internal monologue frozen in place, fighting Pervon Sul, the old champion of the Raven Queen.
Everyone is fighting this tentacle monster that's turning people into stone.
Yeah.
And because he's now the Raven Queen's champion, he has all these extra powers because he's wearing the vestige, and he's able to basically single-handedly save everybody and kill this monster.
Yeah, he took a tentacle up like an elevator and he went all Fruit Ninja on that thing. And they beat the not a beholder. They escape the dungeon, and Zara gives Vex her little locket as a gift, and that's where they keep Trinket when he can't get into places. And that's basically episode 4.
Yeah, and it's funny because Trinket obviously has had a lot of issue getting into places. Every city he comes upon with the group, they're always like, leave the bear outside. So now she could bring the bear with her anywhere she goes. Is it the first episode of this block that we learn where Trinket came from?
It is. We got to see another flashback of Vex and Vax. Vax is saving Vexalia from, I guess she was kidnapped, and they find an injured bear, put it out of its misery, and adopt its cub.
Yeah, at first I thought it was Trinket, and I was like, wow, that looks a lot bigger than Trinket.
Yeah.
And then you saw it just absolutely porcupined by all of the arrows in its back, and then they put it down, and I was like, oh my god, what the heck? Only to learn then that's how they got Trinket, because it was a cub.
For a second I thought they're not going to make Trinket the soul of a bear, and it's not a real bear, but no, it was just a cub. Episode 5, we got some more flashbacks. We go to Keyleth's backstory. She's with her parents, the Erishari, and her mother kind of teaches her about her magic, and then goes off on her own Aramente years ago. We also learned that she could apparently just put her hand through fire because fire needs air to live, and I thought that was a little bit of a stretch. But
it's a little bit of a stretch, but you could appreciate it. I mean, air is the reason for fire. There's no fire in space, right? So it's a good point. And yeah, I mean, I'll allow that one. There's some things that happen a little later that are a little suspect, but that one I'll allow.
It's a good workaround narratively to get that point in there. As we go through this episode, we have Grog talking to his sword, and that's getting a little more intense as we go along. We have Vax having nightmares about dragons, and Keyleth catching him unable to take off his vestige. He's kind of trapped in that thing, apparently.
Yeah, and actually, the sword that Grog has, and it obviously craves and drinks blood. which also it belonged to the
Yes.
Briarwoods, if I remember correctly, and the Briarwoods were vampires.
Yes.
So, is it just a vampire had a sword that was also a vampire,
That is a
or
good point.
was the sword actually something that was affecting the Briarwoods, making them
No,
vampires?
the Lord Silas Briarwood was a vampire. His wife was not. She was more of wizard. So no, that
Okay,
was
but so the vampire had a vampire
yes.
sword. So they just were like best buds. We do the same thing. My sword and
I
me.
guess so. I guess so.
It's like Marley and Me without Owen Wilson and the
Yeah.
dog, but it's a Briarwood and a
Yeah,
sword.
I'd never thought of it that way, but I
Got it.
guess yeah,
Okay.
it's a vampire sword that he's got drinks blood. I should have connected that. That's going to annoy me forever now. Okay, thanks for that. But yeah, we have Grog getting more and more attached to his sword. Let's jump through the Grog storyline really quick with his sword because we can get all that out of the way. He's getting more and more attached to it. He's talking to it. He's trying to hide the fact. He's smart enough to know he doesn't want the rest of the group to know that he's talking to his sword and that his sword hungers for blood to the point where it starts pulling power from him if he doesn't feed it enough.
It sucks from, and correct me if I'm wrong, like it sucks his power from his arm, but then he's like, okay, I'll feed you
Yeah.
actually, and he like cuts himself to get
Right,
more
that was
blood.
during the Sphinx fight, that part. Yeah, so it's really getting to him, and he's had nightmares about murdering the rest of his team by accident,
Mm-hmm.
thinking they were someone else.
Yeah, and that nightmare scene actually reminded me a lot of in the I believe it's the second Avengers movie when Tony Stark kind of sees his comrades or the rest of the Avengers dead
Right,
from kind of a Thanos attack or whatever it may
right.
be, um, just kind of his friends just strewn across the ground dead. It's like, oh man, this is dark.
Yeah. Well, we'll get back to Grog almost or possibly actually killing Pike in a minute. We end up at Pyra, which was where the rift between the world and the plane of fire is, the Fire Ashari, which was one of the places Keyleth was supposed to go on her Aramente, her trip around the world to learn Earth, Wind, Fire, and Water. Water was the Neil Young of Earth, Wind, and Fire. He left early on.
And so this trip that she was supposed to go on, why she left her hometown, she just like ended up not doing
Yeah,
it.
she's
She
kind of doing it, but she has been putting it off and just going around with Vox Machina and fighting stuff. Like she was supposed to go out and learn about the world and accomplish a couple different tests so that she could come back and lead her people. But she's kind of just been learning about the world and started ignoring the tests, I guess, because
right, so it's kind of like after
yeah,
high school, going to Europe for a few
exactly,
months
exactly.
rather than going to college. It's like a
She's
gap
on a
year.
gap year. Exactly that. Exactly that.
Yeah.
But we find the rift open, and we find her father there, and we find Allura and Kima there, who we know didn't die, but I guess Vox Machina didn't know that. And we find out that Allura is the reason Thordak escaped. She says she's the reason he escaped, but it sounds like they did their best and trapped him in the fire plane, and he found a way to escape.
Yeah, that's what I took away from it too. She said they're the reason he escaped, but it actually just looked like they were the reason he was in there
Yeah,
in the
they were
first
the reason
place.
he hadn't been murdering everyone
Um,
all those years. So,
yeah, so you know what? I'll give him a
Yeah,
pass.
but they knew, so they were there, and they all kind of fight the rift. They're having trouble closing it, and then Keyleth remembers that she was made to walk through fire, and just walks into the fire plane, turns herself into a fire elemental, and douses the fire plane with water.
Oh, so that was with water. I just saw it was like
That's
blue stuff, and I was
that's what
like,
I looked
is
like.
she? Yeah. Okay. Well, I like that better than what I thought it was at first because at first she's covered in fire, like it's
Right,
armor that is fire, and she's just like walking through the fire animals. But then there is kind of like an energy or water,
right,
hopefully
right.
it is that is killing them. But it did seem like kill fire with
Yeah.
fire.
Well, you don't fight fire with
Um,
fire. You
but
fight fire with grog.
well, right, yeah, and then they say that as well, which
That
was
was a
very
great
funny.
line. So the other things we have out of this episode, Vex gets her secret word to fly her broom. It's a flying broom.
Yeah, who would have saw that coming? Not me.
Well, I like the way they did it here because in the game, I think Vexalia stole it from one of the guest stars, and then he left. So in this case, she actually just got it. And the other thing we get out of this that I know you would have missed because it has nothing to do with the storyline, but Headmaster Sarkonos of the Fire Ashari, voiced by Robbie Damon, who plays a big part in Campaign 3. That was exciting for me to see. And we see Anna Ripley, turns out, holding up a crystal ball and walking over to the dragons.
Yeah, and who's
that
Anna
was
Ripley?
in season 1. She's the woman that they found in this jail cell that didn't have a hand. That they were dragging along after Percy, that they ended up not killing. She's alive. She's the one that bought the black powder in the last chunk of episodes when Percy goes to the black powder salesman and he says, someone else has been here. He goes, oh yeah, a woman without a hand. It's like Ripley. So that she's following them around too. And again, I'm not sure why Anna Ripley's there or why she's dealing with the dragons, but we also see the Goliaths dealing with the dragons. And I have a feeling that'll come up later because we find out that one of the Goliaths happened to have a vestige, a gauntlet of some sort.
Yeah, and so do we know, is this actually like Grog's people or is it just the same race?
I know. Do you want to know?
Yeah. Oh, okay. No, I mean, not important. Well, I guess it is important, but if it's a spoiler, I just meant at this
it's
point.
It's not really a spoiler, but because they kind of mentioned when it comes up, Grog's like, that's not important. We probably shouldn't go see them. So he obviously knows who these people are and doesn't want to deal with them. Anyway, jumping into episode 6, we find ourselves in front of some pillars at the base of the mountain that Vax saw in a vision from the Deathwalker's ward, because the Matron of Ravens is kind of talking through him now. And they find the temple of the secondary Sphinx, Kamal Giori.
I'm very happy that you had to pronounce that and I didn't have to try, because no chance.
They get in there, and the only thing that saves them from being annihilated immediately is that they yell out that they were sent from his mate Osisa, and he stops and talks to them and gives them a couple options as their challenge, one of which being to wound him, which is the option they choose. Much to Grog's sadness, he wanted to fight the
70 Gorgons or something like that?
Yeah, the Death Gorgons. He wanted to fight some Death Gorgons. But instead they decide to try to wound the Sphinx. Now, in the game, that was not the case. They had to fight the Sphinx while trying to guess his name by finding little tablets laying around the room and put them in order. It was like a fight puzzle. It was
cool.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But this was more narratively enjoyable.
Yeah, because I the second he said you have to wound me, I was like, oh, you gotta hurt his feelings.
Which is what we did.
Yeah. So my thinking was, and I don't know how niche of a call out this is, but in the Dark Tower series, when they're on the train, Blaine, who inflicts pain, they break it because one of the characters just keeps telling like dead baby jokes and nonsensical like curse words and stuff like that, and that breaks him down. So the first place my mind went was like Scanlan's gonna, talk shit to him or something like that. But I could appreciate that he went the love story angle.
Yeah, well, he got called out. He got called out for not being sincere, so we get to see him become sincere.
Oh yeah,
and sing. He basically sung a Taylor Swift song. He became Taylor Sphinx. Apologies. Not in advance, afterwards. But yeah, it was a really good song. I enjoyed it, and it really hurt him emotionally, that Sphinx, Kamal Giori.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you think about it, and my brother brought this up, this Sphinx has been around for eons, has never been wounded at all, and immediately after Scanlan wounds him emotionally, turns out they'd been followed by a dragon. Umbrasyl shows up, epic battle, the Sphinx gets the crap knocked out of him and basically killed.
Yeah.
Wounded twice in one day for the first time.
Right.
Millions of years, I guess he's just never left that cave. That's why he was never wounded.
Yeah, it's so strange because you figure that's like a god-esque character that will be and always has been, and for it to get killed by a dragon. Now, I'm not saying dragons are weak, no, like not at all, but dragons are more typical creatures within fantasy worlds.
Yeah.
And we fully expect Vox Machina to be able to kill a dragon toward the end of this season. So to see a dragon be able to not only take out the Sphinx, but also obviously completely ransack our crew was, I don't know, it felt like It felt a bit disappointing just because the Sphinx should have way more power than the dragon.
He definitely held his own.
But you'd think it'd be the dragon holding its own, not the dragon being able to inflict enough damage to kill the
Fair.
Sphinx.
Now, this was Umbrasyl. I believe Umbrasyl is an ancient dragon. I get that the Sphinx is also millions of years old as well. But dragons technically do get stronger as they age. I don't know what the Sphinx lore is. But
Okay.
if you just had a dragon show up and a Sphinx killed it outside of the rest of the story, it'd feel a little like, what's happening here? Why did we just have a Sphinx kill the dragon? I thought that was the whole point of this. The
Yeah,
Sphinx isn't a main character. Is the Sphinx going to travel with Vox Machina now?
well, right. That's what I was saying. Like, I feel like the dragon could have gotten the vestige, gotten the sword, and just bounced, and it'd been like,
Right,
oh
right.
shit. Well, sorry guys, I'm not about to go
Well,
fight with you. But regardless, I mean, it's sad because that was a pretty cool character, even though we only had him for a single episode. But I think
agreed.
more importantly, you see Grog, and I think this is kind of where we're heading toward the end of this episode and toward the end of these 3 episodes. Again, using that sword and just absolutely going wild. And
Yeah.
now I would say that Grog held his own against the dragon.
And that was another thing that was brought up earlier when I was talking with people. If the team had just gotten their crap together, followed Grog into the fray while the Sphinx was still alive, they might have had a legit chance to take down Umbrasyl.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but instead they formed a plane shift spell, and Grog killed Pike, and then they plane shifted, well, some of them, to the Fey Realm.
So it's Grog, Pike, and Scanlan are not with the rest of the group that lands in the Feyland.
Yes. The rest of them are in the Fey Realm. They're off to find the bow that Scanlan saw. And Grog, Pike, and Scanlan are somewhere. I don't know where they are. I honestly don't know where they are. Okay. I have some guesses as to what they're going to be doing next. They could either be dealing with Grog and Craven Edge, because Pike could try to help Grog get away from Craven Edge, or they could be heading over to the Goliaths to grab that vestige, the gauntlet. Or they could be doing both. Maybe they're trying to get 2 vestiges done at once in the show to kind of speed things up.
Right, because we only do have 6 episodes remaining, so.
Yeah. Well, that's it for us. I'm Andrew. That's Sean. Thanks for watching. I'm sure there's some videos floating around my head on the screen here. Click one of them. Watch it. Go down into the comments. Tell us something about the show. Buy a t-shirt. They're cool looking. We'll see you next time.
Take it easy, YouTube.